Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kat and this is Biblio Obscura. I like to read dark and weird books, even better if they are translated and or queer. So recently I passed 4,000 subscribers, which is absolutely awesome. Thank you so much to everyone who is subscribed and who watches. And I just want to say thank you like so much. As you guys know, if you've been around for a while, this is just my hobby and I do it when I have time. So in the last few years, sometimes I've had to take breaks, small, like a few weeks or even a few months at a time, due to life stuff. And everyone on here has always been so supportive and so nice. And I want to say like thank you so much for that. Yeah, so I asked for questions if you had any on YouTube. I made one of my very rare like community posts and I got a few questions from you guys. So I just am gonna answer them for this video. This is my first Q&A, I think. Yeah, so I'm very excited. So I had two questions from my friend AV, well, Olivia from AV Club. And first off, it was very interesting. She said, favorite drink from everywhere you've lived. So I didn't really drink before university at all. And I went to university in Rhode Island in the US, and my favorite drink in university was a White Russian, which is vodka, Kahlua, and cream. And sometimes if you add in Hershey's chocolate syrup, it's kind of like a mudslide situation. I'm a vodka fan. And then in university, I studied in Bermuda for a semester, and my favorite drink there was a dark and stormy. So a dark and stormy is made with like Gosling's Black Seal dark rum, really dark rum, and ginger beer. And it's it's sweet, but it's also like a little tart and it's very delicious. Then after university, I moved to South Korea. And my favorite drink there was soju with any fruit juice. So soju is super strong. And my favorites were any of the citrus, especially I liked the pineapple soju mixed with a citrus fruit juice. We would do a lot of pre-gaming with soju. It's very inexpensive. You can get it at any corner store and it is very strong. Then after South Korea, I moved to Japan and I have two there. They're also at any convenience store. Chuhai, Huketsu frozen, and Strong Zero, both grapefruit. So I don't really care about it being like super frozen, which is like how they make it. It is a grapefruit strong beverage. That's all I care about. Also a lot of pre-gaming was done with that drink. And then after Japan, now we live in Australia. And actually my favorite drink I've had here is an ice wine, which my father-in-law always gives me when we go over, because I only drink sweet wines, like think Moscato or even sweeter. If you notice, all of these drinks are sweet. I don't like dry, I don't like bitter, I don't like sour. That's not it. So those are all my favorite drinks from everywhere I've lived. That was such a fun question, like to think about it, because I'd actually forgotten. A lot of the South Korean and Japanese drinks that I used to drink aren't sold in Australia. So yeah, I haven't drank them in ages. And then she also asked, what story would you want a retelling of that hasn't gotten one yet? And this made me so happy, because if anyone watches this video and you're an author or an animator or literally anything, if you make any of these, I will die happy. So just off the top, I was like thinking of things that I would love. So very specific. If you've seen Fate Stay Night in Gilgamesh. So Gilgamesh basically, when he fights, like there's portals that open up behind him and all the weapons of all history are available to him. I would love, oh my God, I would love a retelling of Gilgamesh by Madeline Miller. Like if she Song of Achilles Gilgamesh, I would pass away happy. Oh, I would pass away happy. Also, Sisyphus, Madeline Miller, I just want her to get her fingers in everything. I just want her to remake everything. Which is interesting because Circe did not work for me, if I'm being honest, but Song of Achilles obviously is one of my only 5-star reads. I just made a video on that I've only ever had 6 5-star reads. We'll leave that video down below. Song of Achilles is one of them. Anyway, Sisyphus, please, someone make a retelling. That will rip my heart and stomp all over it. Also, someone please somewhere do Nemesis, which is the Greek goddess of retribution for the sin of hubris or arrogance. Hello. Please, someone, somewhere. Who's someone who's writing really good sapphic stuff that's dark? I don't know. Please, just someone, please, I'm begging. And the final one is a myth from Japan that I'm kind of just obsessed with. It's the fox wedding myth. So on really rainy days, they say like a fox must be having a wedding. So there's beautiful artwork of 2 foxes getting married, and they're in the traditional like white outfits. And they're fox processional with like lanterns through the forest, and they make it rain so humans don't discover their wedding. I would freaking love that. Please, someone do a modern retelling. So those, I could go on, but those are some of my top ones that I've never seen retold, and I would love, love, love. I got another question by Amy Elizabeth Reads, which is, which fictional character do you relate to most? Book, movie, TV show, etc. So this one is so interesting because I never kind of think that I am a character. Like, for some reason, people are like, well, do you see yourself in that woman or that man when you read romance? And I'm like, no, I don't really see myself like in the character's shoes. It's more like I relate to them and want to experience their story. So rather than just like one character, I couldn't really think of one. I want to just talk about certain aspects that appeal to me as a person and what I immediately thought of. So first off, strong women. So I like to think of myself as a fairly like strong woman, and from like baby days, I was obsessed with Xena, warrior princess. If you don't know who that is, then I'm just very old. But she's a warrior princess who is amazing. And then obviously Lara Croft, Tomb Raider was my other one. And at this point we're getting into, I'm obsessed with her strength. I might want to be her. I also might want to sleep with her territory. And then also I thought of this, which I had on my shelf. This is Alanna, first test. If you ever read this quartet, Tamora Pierce, where she trains to be a knight, this was so good. And she's extremely strong. She goes through a bunch of like adversarial things because she's a woman who is going through knight training. And yeah, I loved this by Tamora Pierce like back in the day, and I bought it so my daughter can eventually read it. And then next after strong women, I would say neurospicy women. I have like 8.5 diagnoses, whatever. Some of which like are pretty obvious. I talk about them often, like depression and anxiety. And I've spoken before about why I wear wigs. It's like I have trichotillomania, and it's better if I keep my head shaved. So that's what I do. And this book was so good for me to read because Jenny Lawson, who's a comedian and a writer, and she's just a wackadoo person, she also has body-focused repetitive behaviors and trichotillomania and anxiety and depression. So I would say like neurospicy women, I love to read about them because I am one. And then also I have to shout out, it's a very specific mode, a depressive phase couch rot woman. And I have to, like, honestly, my year of rest and relaxation, this isn't a perfect book. I, in fact, didn't like the last chapter at all, but it is the vibe. It is such a vibe. Like, when you're in a depressive episode, a depressive pit, whatever you want to call it, and you just want to stay on the couch forever, or the bed, or whatever. So that, and then queer women, obviously, I've said before, I identify as pansexual, and the one that I thought of like most recently was Compass Rose. There is a ton of like sapphic and just really good like queer women in this book, and they are all over the place, from pirates to mercenaries to naval fleet admirals to like navigators, engineers. So yeah, this one made me think of like queer women, weird women. I consider myself to be weird. And a movie I watched recently, which I really loved, because actually both the characters are really weird. It's a French movie. It's Humanist Vampire Seeking Consenting Suicidal Person. And there's just something so... It's like, they're very weird, and it is dark, but it's also charming. But mainly they're really weird. And I really loved both of them, and like that was one of my favorite movies of last year that I watched. And then the last one I'm going to say is Complex Family Dynamics. So there is a reason I'm American. There's a reason I live in Australia, not America. And the complicated family dynamic, I usually don't like to read about it, but it does pop up sometimes when I'm not aware. Like, I was watching a K-drama, Love Next Door, and there was one scene where the female main character is fighting with her mom, and just the way, the words she's saying, I just started like sobbing. It's one of my favorite female actresses ever. I will put her here. But yeah, so the complex family dynamic, like, it just tore my heart out because it's such a tricky situation. And it's something that you really can't resolve because people are people. And if it's your, like, parents, for example, like, you can't really get new ones. Like, you have the ones you have and you have to work with the situation. And yeah, so I really related to her and made me cry, which was a surprise. And then we're getting down to now Bastion School of Fitness said top 5 favorite anime. 3 off the bat are very easy. So I'm a huge Studio Ghibli fan, like massively, and my top 3 favorites are Nausicaa of the Valley of the Winds. If you haven't heard of it, it's the first one in 1984 that the success of this founded the building of Studio Ghibli. And Howl's Moving Castle, which I think a lot of people are aware of, especially because the English dub is done by like Christian Bale and is it also Cate Blanchett? It's like famous voice actors. And then the other one is Princess Mononoke, which is absolutely amazing. Very, very dark, but really good for like eco themes and like human versus nature and a lot of things like that. So those 3, Nausicaa, Princess Mononoke, and Howl's Moving Castle, I actually wrote my undergrad thesis for English literature on because we could pick from any media as long as we analyzed the text. And yeah, so I love them so much that I wrote like 35-page thesis on them. Oh, and presented at 2 conferences in Washington, D.C. and California about them. Anyway, the other ones are Fate Zero or Fate Stay Night, and these are like where sorcerers can summon fighters through the ages to come to their aid, and the main guy summons a King Arthur reincarnation, Saber. And nothing is as dope as that to me. I would love that retelling. I didn't put it up in the like myths that I would love retold because I think it's already retold here, but I would love a book. Oh my god. Like King Arthur in the modern day, but she's a woman. That sounds really amazing. And my final favorite anime is I No Kusabi, also known as The Space Between. Ricky is a motorcycle racer and he kind of doesn't like give an F, and then he runs up against someone from the upper echelons of the city and things go from there. This is done twice. One is newer and unfinished and the older one is finished, and that's my personal favorite. The end gets me every time. I think it's one of the most beautiful endings I've ever read of something that's if you're gonna do a tragedy, that's the way to do it. But yeah, that's like a more obscure, like older one, I guess. And then, oh my god, wait, blast from the past. I was thinking of old ones. The one that first got me into I think at all, was Descendants of Darkness. Holy crap, I just remembered that out of nowhere. I'll put it here. Yeah, it's about people who are like against supernatural crime, and one is a guy who was like killed and sacrificed, and he comes back to work to find out what happened to him. and the other one is like an angelic detective kind of thing. It's very dark and very gruesome, and yeah, that was like my gateway drug to queer anime and manga. And let's get into manga since we're here. So Chobits, I have to say, is one of my favorite art styles of all time. Clamp is so beautiful. So if you don't know, Chobits is about a guy who finds an android in the trash, and the only word she can say is like Chi, so he names her Chi and like takes care of her. And things are obviously not as they appear to be. This is one of the first things I ever loved for the art style and also human AI aspect. This is, I think, where my love of that specific element came from. Also, I have to mention Mars. So this one is an MF, which I don't read a lot of, but when I do, I want them to be as fucked up as this. So it's about Kira, who is like a high school art student, and she's being relentlessly bullied. And one day, like, a guy rescues her, and he doesn't really care about school. He likes to race motorcycles, and he says, like, he will protect her from the bullies if she tutors him, because he's in danger of flunking out and he needs to graduate. So that is kind of the dynamic there. And you would think that this would be like cliche or like whatever, but it's actually very, very dark, and I have reread it a few times since, and it was a lot darker than I remembered. Like, there's a lot of really like disturbing trigger stuff, so definitely look up the triggers on this one if you're interested in that. But this had been by the throat, and I read it in middle school, which I think might be too early. I remember going to, when I lived in Hawaii, in middle school, I would go to the manga store, like the bookstore, and I would sit there and I would read the newest volume after school. And I only had so much time before my bus came to go home, so I could only read in like 10-minute sections. And yeah, I was obsessed with this series. Okay, sorry if the lighting is different. My battery died, so it's been an hour or two. I think I was saying my favorite mangas. So Chobits, Mars, and I also want to mention Traces of the Sun. So it's about a world where dungeons open up suddenly, and they're portals to like fantasy worlds, and people get powers. Not everyone, but some people. And our main character's power is a restorer. So like he can rebuild stuff in the dungeons. And he and his friends go into battle. They all die. And in order to escape, he reanimates their corpses, and when he leaves, he uses like an invisibility potion to leave, and no one else can see the corpses with him. So in a really devastating way, he's living in his apartment and grieving the loss of all of his friends while their corpses just kind of like bump around and rot in his house. And the thing is, he can't do the one thing he wants to do, which is unalive himself, because he's a restorer. So his body like restores him pretty much immediately. So he makes a deal with the most powerful fighter in Korea, that he will help them on a certain number of raids, which is the number of his friends plus one. So for each raid, the powerful fighter like nullifies his power and like essentially lays one of the friends to rest. And the final one is for him. And oh my gosh, like, it was so devastating, because you think that you're breaking through to this character, but like the levels of trauma in the series are so devastating. And it does have like BL or MM aspects, but there's absolutely no sex in this. I don't even remember if they kiss. It's not really about that. It's about like his whole journey, and it's just so good. And then I mentioned two others in my like best things I've ever read video, which I will leave linked down below. One was Twittering Birds Never Fly, which is Japanese, and I will not mention it again because I went into detail. And the other one is The Beast Must Die, which is Korean. So if you want to know about those, I'll leave them linked down below. So current reads that I'm loving. The lightest one right now is Our Sunny Days, which is adorable. It's a single dad with an infant daughter, and he goes to a small town in Korea to raise her, and he needs help. Enter the village head, who is there for him like for things around the village, like taxes, house repair. He takes care of the old ladies, the chickens, like the kids, and they're, oh, it's so sweet and also surprisingly sexy, but very, very sweet. I'm loving that right now. And the other one I'm loving the most, probably that's super dark, is Shutline. And Shutline is really, really good. It's like a guy who might be an undercover cop or a mercenary or a killer, and a guy who is a like petty thief car mechanic, and they get entangled, and then they can like, they're just great together. So those are probably the mangas that I would say. So the last thing I want to talk about is a comment from Books and Lipstick. They said they like watching my channel because they find books they would not normally come across. So I'm so happy that that is the case. I do like to read books that are up my niche alleys, which just happen to be often more like niche books. So I thought I would go through my Goodreads and recommend you 10 books that you probably haven't come across because they have the least number of reviews, but I still gave them really good ratings. So with 14 reviews, I have Cucumbers and Comforters. This is a very like gore slasher about a water spirit that kills people to get the spirit balls in their butt. 90 reviews, You Will Speak for the Dead, which is about a guy who cleans hoarded houses, and he enters one and there's a mold problem, and this has body horror. 112 reviews, The Dunny. This is one of the best haunted houses, but it's more like a creature feature about something that is in that fucking house. And it's gross, and it was really good. And the cover explains the vibes perfectly. 118 reviews, we have Dark and Lonely Water, which is interesting because the whole novel was pretty mid, about a guy who's investigating a series of murders that are happening in the waterways in the UK. But the ending was so good. Like, it's so rare that that happens, where like the book is like mid and then the end is a fucking banger. Usually it goes the other way. The book is a fucking banger and then the end I'm like, you just couldn't keep your shit together, could you? But this one, if you like water horror, yes, absolutely. With 151 reviews, we have Kelpie Blue. This is about a boy who becomes entangled with the kelpie that lives in the lake near his house. This is like kind of, if you like fae stuff, this would be for you. 163 reviews. We have Ghost Girls, which that is around here somewhere. So this is about someone who teaches English as a second language in Sydney, Australia, when one of the students jumps out the window to her death. And then when they go to investigate, they realize that that's not actually the woman who was actually enrolled. That's someone else. So she's like, what is happening? And she takes it upon herself to investigate what's happening. And this was like really, really good when I read it. And I was like, how has no one heard about this? No one is talking about this. So if that sounds good to you, definitely check this one out. Also, the cover is really, really beautiful. All right. And then we're breaking into the 200s. With 225 reviews, I have Markless. And this was a sapphic read that I read that, like I said, it just couldn't keep it together at the end. So this was a banger the whole way through. It's set in a fantasy world where people get marks on their palms and they get elemental powers. And basically, if you can find your match, it amplifies both your powers. And so we're following like the kingdom's princess who has a half mark, and she absolutely refuses to marry anyone to strengthen her mark. Like, she doesn't want that. And we are following a really powerful witch in the slums who wants to just live her life in peace when their paths cross. And this was really dark, really good. It's kind of African-inspired fantasy world. I thought it was really, really good. I just wish the end had been done a little differently. And now we have a like Korean mythology one. This is 233 reviews, Small Gods of Calamity. This was in my best books of last year. It's about a detective who investigates crimes where there is like spiritual residue. So like they'll sense the spirit and like hear the sound of the brush marks that someone made writing the talismans against evil, or they'll smell like peach blossom, which is either like the location or the perfume the person was wearing. And this had really good like body horror and like mythology elements, and it also has like non-binary and trans rep. Then the lightest one on this with 239 reviews is A Winter's Earl by Annabelle Green. This is for people that like second chance romances. It's MM. It's set in a manner where they're snowed in and they have to figure out what went down. My favorite thing about this was the communication, because they are forced to communicate, and that's something that I find very sexy. And the last one with 292 reviews is From the Neck Up by Eli Whiteley. It's a short story collection which features heavily into the body horror fungal growth realm. So if you like Black Mirror, I think that would be a really good short story collection for you. So those are hopefully 10 books that maybe you have never even heard of before or never even come across, that I really liked, but that apparently no one else is reading, and they should be. So once again, thank you so much to everyone for watching this channel and just giving me grace when I need to take breaks, and being here for when I'm talking about books. So I'm hoping that this year we'll have so many good books. I just filmed my February wrap-up part 1, and it has my worst book of the year on it so far. So it was a bit of a train wreck, but I'm hoping to do better and find better reads for myself. So I will see you in another video soon. Lots of love. Bye! And thank you once again. Bye!